Ed Hardy. No matter if you're of my generation or a Zoomer, we're all familiar with the patented signature logo. Thanks to a recent resurgence, Ed Hardy has ingratiated itself with an entirely new generation, albeit on a smaller, more retro level. Despite including this in the rise and fall of the streetwear brand series, I gotta add a disclaimer that Ed Hardy obviously is not streetwear. It never has been streetwear and it never even tried to be. But it did occupy an interesting spot in the culture at a moment when the genre lines were meshing and something new was in the process of being born. But what role exactly did Ed Hardy play in the streetwear movement? And what was the reason that they fell off so hard in the beginning? Well, let's find out. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is the rise and fall and sorta rise again of Ed Hardy. But before we get started, don't forget to smash that like button for me. I know I always say it, and I kind of sound like a broken record at this point, but liking and sharing the videos really does help us grow as a channel. We can't do it without you guys' help. With all that being said, let's get to it. When talking about Ed Hardy the brand, we have to start with the man, the myth, the legend himself, whose name adorns all the pieces, Don Ed Hardy. Ed was born on January 25th, 1945 in Corona del Mar, California, and developed an early love for the arts. With this in mind, he pursued education to further improve his skill and earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in San Francisco's Art Institute in 1967. After graduating, he decided to travel a bit to further his worldliness and seek inspiration, finding himself in Japan in the 70s. While there, he discovered the art of tattooing. And no, not the Disney Channel G-rated Bati Boy version of tattooing that we here in the West know. Ed was introduced to the ancient techniques, where they use animal teeth, natural inks, and beat the ink into your skin with a stick. That's how real men get tattooed. But all jokes aside, after being introduced to tattooing, the OG style and the more modern methods, Ed fell in love with the practice. So when Ed got back to the States, he started his tattoo apprenticeship under legendary tattoo artist Sailor Jerry Collins in Honolulu, Hawaii. Sailor Jerry would play a very influential role in the development of Ed's style with bold lines, bright colors, and iconic imagery. A look that would later spread around the world in a way that neither Ed nor Jerry could have ever imagined at that time. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Ed would go on to make a name for himself in the tattoo industry, becoming well respected and renowned. But everything would change for him in the early 2000s. It was then that fate brought Don Ed Hardy together with fashion mogul Christian Artigay, igniting a creative partnership that would change fashion forever. A French fashion designer and entrepreneur who was known for his successful work with brands like Von Dutch and his role in popularizing celebrity-endorsed fashion. Von Dutch at the time exploded as a phenomenon and was the precursor to what Ed Hardy would later be. Highly oversaturated, highly commercialized, and highly douchey. But this was the early 2000s, and at the time, these brands were the hottest thing on the market. Artigay had been made aware of Don Ed and recognized the potential to fuse Hardy's artistic designs with clothing, creating a unique and edgy fashion line. And in 2004, Christian Artigay approached Don Ed Hardy with the idea that would be geared around his uniquely classic style of tattoo art. They formed a licensing agreement and launched the brand under the official name of Ed Hardy by Christian Artigay. featuring tattoo-inspired designs that incorporated Hardy's signature motif. Things like skulls, dragons, roses, and other intricate patterns, which at the time was a new thing to the industry. And with the talents of Ed and the business acumen of Christian, it didn't take long for Ed Hardy to catch on with the public. And I'm not sure if it was sheer luck or the genius mind and connections of Artigay, but Ed Hardy managed to catch lightning in a bottle. They came around during an interesting time in fashion history. As I've covered in several other videos, the early 2000s was this cool moment in fashion where cultures and genres were mixing and mingling, and as they attempted to bring forth something new. Prior to then, fashion and culture was boxed off into sections. If you were in rap, you dressed a certain way. If you were in rock, or what they call the preppy, or any of the tons of other groups, each group had their own style, and the divide lines were rigid. In the early 2000s, it brought a different outlook on things. Not to mention that rap was going through its whole party like a rock star phase on the way to becoming the most popular genre in music, which only added to the pop culture craze that Ed Hardy would become. Everywhere you turned, you saw someone wearing Ed Hardy. Ed Hardy's popularity skyrocketed when numerous celebrities began wearing the brand's clothing and accessories. The early 2000s also brought us the phenom of reality TV, and this would add even more fuel to Ed Hardy's fire. The reality TV show LA Inc., which focused on the tattoo shop of Kat Von D, frequently featured Ed Hardy designs and merch. For everyone involved with Ed Hardy, this was probably awesome. They were at the pinnacle of their success. Ed Hardy was global, and they were churning out products of any and every sort. I even saw Ed Hardy lighters and koozies at one point, though God knows if they were actually real or not. But that was one of the byproducts of all of the success that Ed Hardy had built. Fakes were abundant. I personally knew a place here in Dallas that used to wholesale bootleg Ed Hardy, Red Monkey, Evisu, and things of that sort. I was young, so I used to buy the stuff and flip it on eBay. I know, a bit shady, but hey, I was a young, hungry kid trying to get paid, so whatever. But another byproduct of all the success was oversaturation. And while Ed Hardy had experienced a period of immense popularity, it also faced criticism for overexposure and perceived decline in quality. Critics argued that the brand's rapid expansion led to a loss in its original exclusivity and artistic appeal, which, let's be honest, is putting it extremely lightly, because there was no exclusivity. You could find Ed Hardy anywhere in the world, it seemed, and everyone had some, which is great if you want to make a fast buck, but bad if you want to stick around for a while. As the early 2000s wore on, Ed Hardy began to be looked at as more and more cliche. The wild designs, rhinestones all over the place, and the overall douchebag appeal that it gave its wearers caused the brand to fall out of favor. Many joke that in 2009, the death knell was driven into the brand when John and Kate Plus 8's John Gosselin, whom had recently left his insufferable hellspawn of a wife, and was in the full throes of a midlife crisis. Blogs loved talking about them, and whenever John appeared, it seemed that he was on someone's yacht or leaving a club with a different young thought, but almost always clad in the loudest and most obnoxious of Ed Hardy apparel. And although John and his human personification of the Aztec death whistle of a wife was an interesting car wreck to watch at the time, not many people wanted to dress like this guy. So suffice to say, this was a very bad look and publicity for Ed Hardy. Not to mention, the whole rock star phase in rap had thankfully passed. I mean, it got to the point to where I was like, oh my God, bro, shoot me in the face if I have to see one more wallet chain or another with a mohawk. And I gotta admit, I partook for a brief moment before having a life-altering epiphany in the mirror one day, prompting me to realize how much of a jackass I looked like wearing this stuff. All these factors will cause Ed Hardy to fall faster than Nikocado Avocado skydiving with a faulty parachute. I know, I joke, I kid. As if a single-engine Cessna could actually become airborne while attempting to lift that type of a payload. But what seemed like overnight, Ed Hardy found himself persona non grata. Fashion had begun to take a turn for a more minimalistic look, and no one really wanted to walk around looking like a mobile billboard with crazy designs and logos all over their t-shirt as much anymore. And this would basically leave Ed Hardy out in the cold and seemingly dead. Or were they just hibernating? Over time, the Ed Hardy brand underwent changes. Don Ed Hardy himself expressed his dissatisfaction with some of the brand's direction and licensed artwork. The brand transitioned and rebranded to focus on a more refined and subtle aesthetic. In 2011, Christian Artigay sold Ed Hardy brand to Iconics Brand Group. And sadly enough, Christian Artigay would end up passing away a few years later in 2015 due to cancer. RIP, dude. I mean, for nothing else, he did help mold an entire era of fashion, so hats off. As for Don Ed himself, he's still around in San Francisco. He's still tattooing and is now branched out into various other art medias as well. Over the last year or so, Iconics has been attempting to bring the brand back to life. And although they're nowhere near as popular as they once were, you are beginning to see more and more young people breaking out the Ed Hardy logo once again. Ed Hardy definitely deserves OG status. They sparked an entire genre of loud tattoo-inspired clothing that was copied by many. They rode the wave of pop culture's rockstar era, and they made tons of money in the process. And although they probably will never be as big as they were in the early 2000s, that really doesn't even matter because Ed Hardy was a vibe. They defined an era, and at the end of the day, that's all that they need to do to go down as legends in my eyes. But what do you think? Were you a fan of Ed Hardy back in the day? Would you wear any of the new stuff that they're releasing now? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know. And if you made it all the way through the video, then we hope that means you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed it, then please consider hitting that like button for me. Liking and sharing the video is the only way to get the YouTube algorithms to notice us and to continue to suggest us to more people. And if you want to be updated whenever we drop a new episode, then hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell so that you might be notified whenever a new video drops. But with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out until next time. Peace.